Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Father Roderick. Welcome to the live stream, this week's Ask Me Anything. Welcome wherever you are in the world. I'm glad you can stop by, and if you're watching this on LinkedIn or Facebook, the the discussion and the questions are mostly happening on one of my YouTube channels. So you could go to youtube.com/Father Roderick, for instance. But regardless where you're watching this, I hope you are going to enjoy this upcoming hour. So I've been doing this for a number of weeks now. For those of you that have never seen me before, I'm a Dutch Catholic priest. I live here in this kind of on the more the eastern side of the Netherlands right now. And I assist in a parish during the weekends, but during the week, my job is media. It is has been my mission for my entire ministry for as long as I've been a priest. I've been always working in the media at various degrees. Started off with a Star Wars website, believe it or not, and a catechesis website. I even had a big Catholic news website for years because in the Netherlands we didn't have much online coverage of what was happening in the Catholic Church. And then everything changed when I went to Rome to study social communications. I did a 2-year formation where I specialized in creating radio and television programs. And then when I came back to the Netherlands, that became my job. So in addition to the work that I did online, I started to work in Dutch TV, Dutch national TV, and that's what I still do today. So tomorrow I'm going to have another day of filming, and the program that I'm currently hosting is an interview program, which is broadcast on Sunday morning, so very appropriate time for a Catholic program, and I just interview people about their faith and how they put their faith into practice. It's a lot of fun to do. I love having conversations with people. I'm gradually learning to be a better interviewer, and it's also an experience that I also apply to other domains because, as you know, I'm a priest, but I'm also a geek. I'm also a writer, an author, and I try to reach out to all these different groups that can relate to some of these aspects. So, for instance, as a fantasy writer, I often go to fantasy festivals, and then I talk with cosplayers or fantasy authors, and I just ask them about the stories that they love, and then I try to get a little bit, dig a bit deeper and have a conversation about the values in those stories and the message that they would like to enhance or strengthen. And those are always amazing conversations because usually on events like that, it's not the kind of conversation that people have. And that I think is one of my strengths, that I can help people to kind of uncover the deeper layers of why they do things and how they would like the world to be. And then I do a similar thing online on my YouTube channel, and I've got a big TikTok channel, and I talk about anime and about Star Wars and about movies, and I try to explain the deeper layers that I perceive in those stories, and I try to build bridges between popular culture and the centuries old tradition of faith, and that's also a lot of fun to do. And then finally, ultimately, I am currently writing my first fantasy novel, as you probably know by now, and in order to kind of train myself to become more fluent as a writer, I try to write a short story every single day. So it's not the big fantasy novel, but I'm learning a lot from that experience, and it's also a lot of fun. I always have story ideas, but hardly ever can fit them into the kind of the outline of the story that I have in my mind for my first book. And so just having the opportunity to tell a short story, just a few paragraphs, and then usually there's some twist or some surprise. I kind of love doing that. And so today I recorded one of those stories, and I intend to do this every week from now on. So I'm going to pick one of those 7 stories that I create during the week, and it's kind of the story that I relate the most to, or the one that moved me the most, or that I'm most proud of. And then I just recorded it in my living room and posted that on YouTube. So it's also another way, because adding my voice to the story, I think adds a dimension. At least for me, it's very different, like narrating a story, than it is to just write it down and then have someone read it from the screen. So hopefully that will find its audience as well. I just want to say hello to the people in the chat room. By the way, if you're watching this and you haven't introduced yourself, please do so. And if you have any questions, then feel free to ask them. I'm here for that. And if there are no questions, then I'll just blab. I'm very good at just talking. Samuel is here from Sweden, and he's putting the kid to bed. And I'm glad to read that your brother is doing better, that he's out of the woods and maybe even can go home. That was a very scary situation, and I'm so relieved to hear that the prayers helped. And obviously also the medical care, because, you know, those two are not in opposition. But that must be a huge relief for you and for everyone involved. Mike is also there. Hi, good to see you again. We have also someone called I Am Amsterdam, or I Amsterdam, probably also from the Netherlands, who writes, "Great to see you again. I lost track of you. I listened to the Daily Breakfast back in the day, probably 20 years ago." Yeah, probably. Let's see, that should be, I started the Daily Breakfast in 2005. So yeah, that's 20 years ago. But I always continued podcasting, and of course started to do way more than that. And so today I'm writing. I love to do the videos and television work. So I've always been in the creative sphere. And one of the advantages of just always being present online is that every once in a while someone just crosses your paths again after a long time, and that's always wonderful. So glad that you're here. And if you have any questions about what happened in the past 20 years, feel free to ask it. And we've also Chulena Banana. I suppose that's a screen name. Good evening to you too. Hope you're doing well. And so, yeah, let me just tell you what I did over this weekend. So I'm writing a lot. Oh, I want to say hi to Sherry from the USA, listening while I'm working in the new job after being laid off for nearly 10 months. So feeling grateful. That is wonderful to hear, Sherry. Yeah, this is a bad time to be out of work. I'm so glad you found a new job. I hope it's also a fulfilling job. And that must be a massive relief to, you know, be able to generate some income now again after 10 months. I can't believe how hard that must be, and how scary that must be to be without a job for so long. So I was saying this past weekend, I did a bit of a deep dive. So on Sunday, I usually record my 2 long-form podcasts that I post online. So one is called The Walk with Father Roderick, and the other one is a podcast called, it's just a premium podcast that I record for my supporters. And I send that to the people that help me with their monthly micro donations. If you want to, by the way, join that group of people that makes it possible that I do this work, check out fatherroderick.com/join. So fatherroderick.com/join. So I'll get to the questions in a minute. But on Sunday, I was just having this conversation with my future listeners about this deep dive that I did with ChatGPT, trying to analyze, what is like kind of my core mission, because I do so many different things. And for me, it's always a struggle to focus on, on one thing or do one thing really well, and to figure out, what should have my primary attention right now. What is priority and what is not. My mind also always wants to do everything and always has a new idea. And so I felt it was necessary to just take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And so I was very surprised that ChatGPT, you know, knowing already so much about me, came up with this basically this core mission for me that would be a writer first before anything else. Because writing is something that is allowing you to get your story out, your message out, and it's not just part of a role of, obviously, I'm as a priest, I'm supposed to preach in church, I'm supposed to help people in a pastoral way. But then as a geek, I'd love to talk about Star Wars Andor, for instance. I'm currently watching season 2. At episode 9 now. I'm going to watch episode 9 tonight. I'm taking my time, and I have so many things to say about it, but recording a video about that means that I have to sit down, gather my thoughts, and write a script. So there you go. There's also writing involved. Same thing with preaching in church. You know, you write some ideas down, or at least I write them just in my mind. But the one thing that ChatGPT said was, and it knows actually that I always struggle with, like, in all these roles, where am I? You know, what? Every role also requires a certain how do you say it? It's like role playing almost. That sounds a bit as if I'm fake, but it's not. It's just that you enhance certain aspects. Like I'm doing right now. I'm talking to you. I'm live streaming, so I'm a little bit more energetic than I was when I was in the kitchen trying to figure out how to prepare a pasta before I ran out of time. But I always feel like in all the different things that I do, you know, am I truly also myself in that? Or am I just putting on a mask and then I'm Father Roderick the Geek? Or I'm Father Roderick the Star Wars Geek? Or I'm Father Roderick the anime guy? Or, you know. And so the writing as an identity actually brings all that together. And it ChatGPT encouraged me to put writing in the center of what I do. And so it came up with a weekly schedule. And every day it suggests that I reserve around 2 hours of concentrated reading, which means no inbox, no notifications, turn everything off, no phone, and then just treat that as sacred time. And I've been doing that over the past week now, and I love it. It's addictive. It just gives me so much peace to start the day with focusing on something that I create without it having to serve a certain purpose. Because that's the cool thing about fantasy writing. There's no use for that. It's also it's not a need. There are so many books out there, you know. There's no one is actually waiting for my book. So what that means is that writing a fantasy story or a short story is a way for me to express this creativity. And it had a metaphor. It used a term for this, and I love that. It said, ChatGPT said, you have to see writing, creative writing, as liturgy. And that really helped me understand what it was. So it's not, I do something because people are waiting for it or I get something in return. Just like liturgy has no purpose. Liturgy is worship. It's a time where you celebrate what God has given you, but it's not a performance. And in the same way, kind of looking at my writing like that liberated me from this internal pressure that I so quickly inflict on myself, where it's like, okay, I need to write that story. The book must be finished between now and the summer. And letting go of that actually, and that's what I started to notice, is it opens a bigger creative space. So I can let my mind really roam free, and I think the result is really wonderful, and I'm very happy with it. I still always kind of fall back in that old behavior where I'm checking on Substack. Is anyone liking this story? Do I get any comments? And that's kind of what a lot of us are struggling with, you know? When we scroll through our feeds, we always want to see if someone liked my post or left me a comment or befriended me. And ChatGPT said you have to be careful with that, because before you know it, you're working for clicks instead of building with bricks. I thought it was brilliant. That's so true. And it also kind of makes you, it influences your mood. You know, when you don't get any likes or reposts of your stories, then you get depressed and you start to doubt yourself. And so the goal for me, the long-term goal, is to really detox of that kind of ongoing desire to be validated. And ChatGPT, I think, very correctly says the validation should come from within. And so the more you enjoy the process of writing just for what it is, an expression of creativity, and the more that becomes your identity, the less you feel inclined to check your value through by outside parameters, by relying on other people's validation. And ultimately, that will lead to freedom, to inner freedom. And I just didn't expect, when I started writing on January the 1st, because that's when I started writing my fantasy novel, I never expected it to be such a spiritual journey. I just thought it's fun, it's creative. I'm gonna write a book, and it is so fundamentally changing the way I look at myself and the way I look at my life and even at my vocation. And I'm really grateful for that. And I love the kind of the coaching that I get through ChatGPT. Now, I created this like a specific ChatGPT project for this, so that it helps me kind of discerning. But I love, for instance, the encouragement to not censor myself, to not put boundaries around, but to really try to feel feelings and to write about the things that are, that I struggle with hurt, with sadness. Just put those emotions on paper. And that's not something I usually do, because of the role I'm supposed to play. I'm here to console people, not to be consoled. and it's kind of that ingrained role playing, I think, that can be a hindrance if you want to become a good writer, because real writing, or writing that can touch other people, should first of all touch you, or you should let yourself be touched and then put that in words. So, long story to let you know that the story that I narrated today on my books channel, on my booktube channel, is a story that actually made me cry, even when I wrote it down. Not because the story is so wonderful, but it is, but it was because it touched upon something really, really deep. And that was, and the more I get older, the more I really feel this in my bones. It's that time keeps passing, and there are so many wonderful things in life that you don't value in the moment. And you start only valuing it and missing it when they're gone. Like people in your life, like people that died. But also moments in your life. Times where you were able to do stuff that now, because you're getting older, you can't do anymore. Or because life is too busy and you kind of miss that freedom that you used to have. And that can lead to profound sadness and melancholy. But this story, it's a story about hedgehogs. About groundhogs. But the story is about that, so it validates those feelings of loss and sadness, but it also, I think, gives a beautiful message about what remains. And it's an invitation to look at everything that you have right now and to value that, and to taste the future in that, and to distill hope from that. And it was like, while I was writing the story, it just, I don't know, it just moved me. That still moves me now. And I don't know if that comes across. I have no idea. But it's something that I didn't think that writing could do. But it does. Anyway, enough about me. Let's go and take a look at your questions. Thank you, by the way, for joining me. If you're arriving on the feed right now, feel free to ask me anything. That's why I'm here, or just leave a remark or tell me what's going on in your life. So Samuel enjoys Andor season 2 just as much as I do. It is amazing. I couldn't just digest all those wonderful episodes in, binge watching it. So I'm behind, unfortunately, and I'm behind on a lot of series, but I'm taking my time. I'm savoring each episode. And after this, of course, I'm going to rewatch Rogue One, because that must be a totally different movie now, or at least a different experience after watching Andor season 2. Frankie is there too. Good to see you. And we've got Gannon, who says hi. And let's see. Jonah writes, I'm going to get a little bit closer to the screen because I've got a tiny little screen on which the questions are projected, but the letters are kind of tiny for my aging eyes. Jonah writes, I've seen some of your videos. Fun to see someone learning their process and voice as I'm doing the same. You don't feel odd about letting a robot devoid of feeling give you advice on feelings. Yeah, sure. That is weird. That is very weird. But you have to see this, I think, more as ChatGPT is not a robot. It's not even intelligent. AI is a misnomer. It's probability, basically. It has a tremendous amount of existing knowledge that it summarizes, that it analyzes, and it produces something that is the most likely to answer a question. So I see this more akin to, for instance, learning about my feelings and healing by reading books. I read a lot of books. Last year I read a ton of books about therapy and neuroscience, neuropsychology. And there too, you're listening to the voice of someone else that you don't know. It's just words on a piece of paper. But yet those words have had a tremendous transforming impact on me. And so for me, ChatGPT is kind of similar. It's a very advanced type of book, maybe, but it's still similar. It just serves me the information that is already out there. It doesn't make things up. It just combines stuff. And but it is the accumulated knowledge of a lot of real people that have fed these large language models. And so if you know how to query it, I still do a lot of research on, how can I use this best as a tool? And if you don't kind of expect too much of ChatGPT, because it's not human, it's not intelligent, you can still find a lot of helpful information and helpful advice. And so again, I see this more as something that is akin to reading other people's knowledge is served to me in a way that applies to my current situation. And otherwise, I do that. When I read the Bible is not going to tell me what it means. No, it's a negotiation. I read those stories from thousands of years ago. And then I was like, okay, this I can use. This, yeah, that was 2,000 years ago. We don't do that anymore, So we're always doing this. We're always negotiating with information that comes to us. And I see ChatGPT basically as a tool that helps me filter before I am starting to negotiate. But when ChatGPT sees patterns, and it's very good at pattern recognition because that's a mathematical thing, that's a statistical thing, it sometimes notices things that I say, but I don't realize that I say them. It's these patterns in my behavior that are there. It's not making it up. But it reflects it back to me, and then I'm like, oh, that is so true. So, and it sometimes feels like magic, but it's not. It's not. It's just a machine. It's just chance, calculation, probability, science, and but it works. It works for me on a lot of different levels. And of course, it doesn't replace human advice or even therapy. And I don't think it can, because there is always a deeper dimension in like real conversations that we have. And I think that one of the misconceptions today is that a lot of people think that it's actually we're talking to a robot. You know, the machines are taking over. We're heading towards the Terminator territory. Not a chance. Not a chance. We are still fully in command. And if I don't prompt the thing, it doesn't do anything, you know? So the quality of the results, and I've seen this over and over again, the quality of the results really depend on the quality of my input and the prompts that I give it. If you don't, then it just starts to produce slop. That's the whole issue with Facebook. It's like unbelievable garbage. And for some reason, Mark Zuckerberg thinks that that's a good idea. It probably makes him money. So he doesn't care if it's a good idea, as long as it makes him money. But ultimately, I think it's super empty and vapid and void. And I think one of the things that I want to do is to be someone who can help other people because I know how to use the tools. But I can also add something of myself. Anyway, I hope that was enough of an answer to your remarks. But yeah, and about finding your voice, that is what I love about writing, and especially telling myself time and again, nobody needs to read this. I am publishing my short stories, but I don't publish my first draft. And I'm glad I didn't. A while ago, I was thinking about, maybe I should just do serialized publishing. And so I would write a new chapter every week and publish that. And I'm so glad I didn't, because it would have put a lot of pressure on my writing. And with the short stories, I don't mind if one story is better than another, because that's, for me, it's just basically homework. It's an assignment that helps me to become better at writing, and I can try stuff out. It's very experimental. But for my novel, I just want to try to learn what is my voice, how do I write, what is important to me, and to really dare to be daring, because I think the biggest challenge for me as a writer is not to learn how to write, because I can do that more or less. I can talk, I can tell stories, but the biggest challenge for me and the scariest part is to put my heart on the page, to really express in my characters and in my story what's happening in my soul. And that is something that's scary. And sometimes I'm not even aware of what I actually think. So for me, writing is also a lot of self-reflection, and it's not unlike prayer in a sense that it requires you to connect with your inner self. And there is, even in writing, there can be also an aspect of prayer where you ask the Holy Spirit, who is actually the creator, to help you create something that expresses yourself and also helps others. And if you see it in that way, then writing is not completely useless. But like liturgy, it's an expression of the beauty, the truth, the unity of the Holy Spirit. I'm getting very theological here, but I just wanted to say it so I can later on refer to these words when I have to explain why I'm writing. Hey, Rosie. Arastam, hello there. Watching on Facebook. Really glad you're watching. Samuel wants to know, what was my best and worst book you read in this last year? Best book for Samuel was The Demon Awakens, which I haven't heard of, and The Fourth Wing was the worst. It's the worst book. I didn't even finish it, which is very rare, but it was an AI book. At least in hindsight, I think it must have been AI. It was the absolute worst fantasy book that I've ever tried to read, and it was just complete garbage. Um, it's as if someone just put in one prompt and say, okay, I want to tell a story about two kids and it's got to be magical, and just put in some bad guys. And the result is so completely vapid and dumb, and there's no dialogue. It just had a beautiful cover, also AI. And it looked like a good fantasy novel. Like, why does nobody talk about this? Well, okay, I understand. But that's, I can hardly say that that is a book. That's just AI slob. A book that I had high expectations off, that I expected a lot of, was The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. The reason that I started to read Robin Hobb was actually because of a new parishioner. There was someone who came to Mass at one point, and then afterwards told me that she had found my channel, and that she was very surprised that I, as a priest, I was writing a fantasy novel. And so we just conversed about fantasy, and I asked her, what are your favorite books? And she said, Robin Hobb. It's amazing. You have to read it. It's slow. It's not for everyone, but read it. It's amazing. And so I did, and I knew Robin Hobb from the covers, beautiful book covers, and I'd seen the books kind of pop up on the videos of some of the booktubers that I follow and on Book Talk, but I never really watched any of those reviews. So I just started reading the first book in the series, which is called The Assassin's Apprentice. It tells the story about this young boy called Fitz, who has a gift. He can kind of connect with animals and temporarily, I'm not sure if he can take over, but he can look through their eyes in a certain way. And he is also a bastard son. So his father is a king or a prince. And then at one point, he is supposed to become the king's assassin. And so he receives a formation to become an assassin by this grumpy old man who, tries to, it's kind of like a substitute father figure for him. And I read this book, I listened to this book while I was playing a video game, Valheim. So I was walking around in mythical Scandinavia, you could say. And the book took forever. I listened to it at twice the speed, or sometimes even at 3 times the speed, and it was still slow. It was so slow. Fitz was a very passive man. Didn't get anything done. The magic was really vague and not really a factor in the book. And then there were also some bad guys that were very schematic, like the really mustache twirling type of evil guys that get away with everything for some reason. And it's just, the book didn't go anywhere. And I was so disappointed. I was like, how can people say that this is so amazing? And the additional problem was that the book was, I was listening to the audiobook the book was read by a voice actor who I think didn't care for the book, or at least that's kind of how he comes across. It's this very monotonous, kind of like slow way of talking like that, and it's just as if every sentence sounds like the previous sentence, and it's I was like, dude, do you even want to read this? and that also really destroyed my reading experience. But I've been wrong in the past before. There were books that I completely discarded, and when I reread them, I loved them. So I know this from myself, and I want to give Robin Hobb another chance. It's not by accident that she's so famous. So there's got to be more to these books, but I need to find a way to get through the next book, which is even longer, in a different way. So reading from a page, that's going to be hard. Especially if the books are slow, I get distracted, I can't focus. ADHD. However, there is maybe a solution, and that is that either I find the Dutch audiobook version of this, although I don't know if it even exists, or the French or the German version. I can listen to a book in another language. I should try French. French would kind of work for this story. Anyway, we'll see. Or I have one Alexa device. The kind of like my entire home is Google. I'm not very happy with that either, but anyway, that's what I invested in back in the time, in the day. But I still bought this Puck, this Alexa device. And there's one thing that it does really well. You can say, hey, continue reading the book that I'm currently reading. And if I'm reading the book in Kindle, on my Kindle, it knows where I am and it will start reading the book to me with an artificial voice. But the voice is really good. It's far superior to, for instance, Google Play, who also, I'm not sure if it still has that function. It used to have that function. That's how I read the first 4 books of the Wheel of Time. I just had Google Play read it to me. It was a pretty robotic voice, but somehow it kind of worked for me. Maybe because it was such a kind of disembodied voice. But the Kindle app or whatever it is really good. You can totally listen to it. I read the book about the teenage years of Princess Leia. Something with heritage or something, or bloodline. I think it's Bloodlines or something. Anyway, it's a great story. It's kind of like the sequel to the story that we saw in the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV series. And I read that just by listening to the Amazon, what's it called? The Alexa device. And so that could also be a way to listen to Assassin's Apprentice. Anyway, so that was definitely maybe not the worst book, because it's probably a very good book. It's just my experience wasn't the best. And then the best book that I've read so far, ooh, that's a hard one. If I only look at this year, because last year I read so many books I don't even recall. I read a lot of Blake Crouch, which is one of my favorite science fiction authors. He wrote a book series called Wayward Pines, which I will recommend to anyone at any time. It's one of the best science fiction books or series I've ever read. So it's called Wayward Pines. And he also wrote Dark Matter, which is now a TV series on Apple TV Plus, and it is amazing. It is features what's his name? Joel something. The guy who plays Uncle Owen, the younger Uncle Owen. So it's that same actor who has the lead. Let me take a look at my reading list of this year. I'm behind again, which annoys me. Reading challenge. Okay, where are my books? How can I see my books? Challenge details. Does it show my books? Yes. Okay. More books. I'll just start in January. Oh, I already know what my favorite book was. I already know it. Yeah, so I'll just tell you what I read. So I read. I'll just mention the fantasy books that I read so far. Fourth Wing. Yeah, it wasn't very good. Not really. I'm not the target audience. It was actually not as bad as I thought it would be. But yeah, totally not I'm not the audience for it. Assassin's Apprentice, already talked about that. I really liked V.E. Schwab's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Schwab is really, I love her writing style. And I've read a few more books that she wrote. I want to start one of her bigger fantasy series soon. Let's see, what else did I read? Of course, the Warrior Cats books. It's called Warriors in the US, I heard. I read the first one, really enjoyed it. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I don't remember much of that book. There were 3 books that I absolutely adored, and this is my favorite writer of this year, and it's a guy called William Nicholson, and he wrote the Windsinger trilogy. It's amazing. It's Narnia for today. I was blown away by that story, even though it's targeted at kids, just like Narnia. But actually, and don't tell anyone I said this, but I liked it better than Narnia, a lot better. So it's a trilogy. The first book is called The Wind Singer. Second book is called The Slaves of the Slaves of the Mastery, and the third book is called Fire Song. And it is so deep, and it's so good, and it's so entertaining. I want to reread it. That's how good it is. City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. As I said, it's more for teens, but still enjoyed it. And this was my absolute favorite book, and it's not even a book. It's actually a play, and I listened to the stage recording of the play. It is written by the same William Nicholson of that Wind Singer trilogy. William Nicholson is, he's still alive. He's, I think, 80 now or 80 something. He's done a lot of things. He wrote fiction for adults. He wrote children's books. And he was also a script doctor. If you look him up on Wikipedia, you will discover that he actually was the one who saved the Gladiator, the first Gladiator movie. They were completely stuck. They had a massive problem. One of their main actors died in the middle of shooting the film. They brought him in to fix that issue and some of the others, and it is thanks to his last-minute changes that the movie became what it is today. And so, but he also is a playwright. How do you say that? He writes plays. And so he wrote this play on which also became the foundation for a movie called Shadowlands. And so Shadowlands tells the story. It's a tragic story, and it's based on real happenings, real events. It's a tragic love story between C.S. Lewis, the C.S. Lewis of Narnia fame, and this American lady that he befriends and that he falls in love with. And it's an amazing story. It's a very unlikely friendship. And if it weren't based on real events, you would think this is too much. This can't be happening. Also because there's just so much drama. And you're like, whoa, isn't this a bit too much? But it happened like this. But the way this was written, and I listened to one particular performance. Obviously, there are multiple performances of Shadowlands. I was in tears. I was crying, but like bawling. I was so heartbroken, and it was a dimension of C.S. Lewis' life that I kind of vaguely remembered, but I never thought it was so tragic and so intense. And C.S. Lewis wrote a whole book about his experience of grief following the death of this American lady. And apparently, from what I've heard, it's one of his deepest books. And so the events in Shadowlands actually take place long after he had written Narnia. In fact, the reason that he came into contact with this American lady was that her son was a fan of Narnia. And anyway, it was just so beautiful. And it's something I would have never read, because I don't read theater plays normally, not for fun, and not a tragedy like this. But it was because I read the children's book series, the Wind Singer trilogy by William Nicholson, and then the algorithm of Goodreads, I think, just showed me this play. I was like, wow, if it's William Nicholson, I'm probably gonna love it, and so I did. And it was also, I think, earlier this year, the first time that I experienced the power of writing and how much writing can touch like the deepest layers of your soul, and reading also as a consequence. So I'm intensely grateful for having read that. Hope that answers your question. I did read some more books. There was a book called Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher, also one of my favorite kind of modern fantasy authors. Thornhedge is a retelling of the Beauty and the Beast, and it was fine. It was fine. It's well written. The thing is, you already know the story very well, so there weren't that many surprises in the book. But it was really well written. And then I read Tolkien's The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, which was delightful. Especially having seen the second season of Rings of Power, where Tom Bombadil has a very important role. And now that I read The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, I admire what they did in the series even more, because it's very close to what happens in this very long poem that Tolkien wrote. It's great. Read some really good books about Tolkien and about the deeper meaning of Lord of the Rings, or the deeper layers. So I read Tolkien's Ordinary Virtues, Exploring the Spiritual Themes of the Lord of the Rings by Mark Eddy Smith, which was good, very good. But it wasn't as good as Joseph Pierce's series on The Hidden Meaning of the Lord of the Rings, the theological vision in Tolkien's fiction. That was an audiobook series, actually a series of lectures that he did years ago. Chef's kiss. It's amazing. I will never read Tolkien in the same way anymore after having read this. He also wrote or published another series of courses on The Hobbit, which was equally stunning. Yeah, I want to reread it. It was such an eye-opening read. I read a small book by Robin Hobb, hoping that I'll just read a novella. Maybe I'll give her another chance. And it was called The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince, and that was actually better. It's definitely better, but still not really my thing. But anyway, I read Untethered Sky, which is standalone by Fonda Lee. I'm a huge fan of Fonda Lee's writings, especially is it Yellowface that she wrote? Fantastic book. I still need to read Babel, but this was a short book, and it was really enjoyable. Then I read a series by Suzanne Collins, or I wanted to read the entire series, also a trilogy, children's books. Suzanne Collins, if that rings a bell, she's the writer of the Hunger Games series. But before she published the Hunger Games, she published a series of books about a kid, or actually a brother and sister, young kids, and they end up in the sewers of New York. Sounds like a fantastic idea for a story. And the sewer is crawling with huge cockroaches and worms and other nasty creatures. And they are huge. And there is an entire society underground in the sewers of New York. And the kids are running around there trying to survive. And it is not good. This is really not fun to read. Especially because the whole story just oozes darkness and mud and excrements, and it's just like, I don't want to be in this world. I read Tolkien, I read The Lord of the Rings so I can be in Middle Earth, because it's aspirational. That is a world I would actually prefer over the world that I currently live in. This is a world I don't even want to think about. What was Suzanne Collins thinking? It is really, oh my goodness. No, not for me. It's okay. It's, I actually listened to the German audiobook, which was fun because they had voice actors in it, and music and sound effects. And even though the production was pretty well done, the story just, no. I don't want to dwell in an imaginary sewer. Thank you. Gosh, what else did I read? Oh, Brandon Sanderson. A small one. The Emperor's Soul. It was really good. I love that one. The Emperor's Soul. It is taking place in the Cosmere, but this is one of those rare books by Brandon Sanderson that gives you a taste of the Cosmere and of a good magic system, but you don't have to read like 1,400 pages. So recommended for people who just want to get a sample of Brandon Sanderson without reading for the rest of their life. Let's see. A Pilgrimage of Sorts by Anthony Ryan. That's actually the first book of the whole series. It was good. I liked it. Oh, this is Kingfisher. I was wrong. It was Bryony and Roses. That was the Beauty and the Beast retelling. And then I read one Terry Pratchett called The Carpet People. And it's the first fantasy book that he ever wrote. The Carpet People tells the story of an entire society that lives inside the carpet in your living room. And it's very quirky and goofy and strange. Very much Terry Pratchett. You can tell that it's him. But you can also tell that it's his first novel. Because it tends to be a bit of a slog at times. There are a lot of chapters that just drag on, and it's sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's just really weird and disconcerting. Disconcerting in the sense that it goes nowhere. And so anyway, so The Carpet People, but the audiobook is read by David Tennant, the David Tennant, and it is glorious. It's absolutely David Tennant helped me get through that book, because the book itself, the story itself, is really not that good. But with David Tennant, it just gives it 5 extra points, you know? So, yeah, I hope that he has read other Terry Pratchett books, because his delivery really works well with that type of humor that Terry Pratchett is so famous for. All right, I'm going back to the questions. Thank you, Samuel, for that question. My apologies for the very long-winded reply. But when I start talking about books, it's hard for me to stop. Nacho says, I've been following you for years. I love that you love movies. I love that you love that I love movies. How many languages do I speak? A bunch of them. German, Dutch, English, French, Italian, a bit of Spanish. I read Latin, and I read with a lot of effort. I read a bit of Hebrew, like ancient Hebrew, and also Greek. Also with a lot of effort, because I'd never have to, so kind of forget about stuff. Tony says, happiness doesn't know any grade. Happiness doesn't have levels. True. Happiness is, it's like, I always think when people say, well, a saint in heaven, is he or she going to have more fun than I will have as a regular human being? And I always love this analogy. Like, it's like you have cups, you've got a small cup like that, and you've got a big cup like that. If you fill them with water all the way to the edge, you would say, well, there's more water in this one, right? But if you look at it from the point of view of, are they really fulfilled? Are they full? Then the little cup can say, I'm full. This is amazing. No more needs. And the big jug can say, hey, I'm full as well. Just like the little one, So that's kind of always how I see this. Happiness can fulfill anyone. It doesn't depend on your income, on your success in life, if you have kids or you don't have kids, if you have, an academic degree or you just did primary school. It doesn't even depend on whether or not you live in a country where there's peace or a country where you're in war. Your heart is the measure of happiness. And you can make someone happy in the middle of a war, and this happens. Someone who is saving someone else's life in the middle of a horrible situation. That is the gift of happiness. So it's not happiness like everything is hunky-dory and I have no worries. No, happiness is fulfillment. It's like is, am I serving my purpose? And if you help someone, and this, I always think about this when I hear stories about, that we live in such dangerous times, and the economic and political stability seems to be so far in the past. Will we ever return to that? And I keep telling myself, whatever happens, it can never rob me of the possibility to make someone else happy. And if I'm lucky, I will find other people who will make me happy, no matter what happens. And there is beauty in that. Even in prison, you can still be happy. You can find God. You can find friendship. You can be a friend. So the only question that I keep asking myself is, what can I do in my life right now, in my situation, to help other people be happy, or at least feel validated or heard, or that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here talking to you. It's just I want to give you a bit of my time, so that we can experience company together and a little bit of community, and maybe put a smile on your face or give you an insight. And likewise, your questions, the fact that you're here, that you're watching this, it's a gift. It's a gift of your presence. And I value that. That is wonderful that you give me that gift, and you give that the gift of your questions to the rest of the people that are watching right now or will be watching later on. And it doesn't cost anything. Well, it costs time, but I mean, this is something that we can always do. You don't even have to be online for that. You can just sit together with a couple of friends and talk for an hour, and that in itself will generate joy and happiness and fulfillment. Jonah asks, also a branding question. Why lean into the priestly side in your online persona? Why not just wear casual clothes and record in your off time? It's a very good question. People sometimes wonder if I ever wear other clothes. And I would say, well, not really, because I only have these clothes. I don't really have any. Well, I'm wearing a t-shirt, which, by the way, let me see. Oh, I've got a Darth Vader t-shirt. I'll show you. Yeah. See? That's Darth Vader taking a selfie or taking a picture with an Imperial phone. I thought it was an iPhone, but so yeah. So I am a geek, but these are t-shirts. These were gifts. I didn't buy this myself. This is just someone, hey, you love Star Wars? Here is a t-shirt. And I just use that as a t-shirt, basically as undergarments. But the reason that I am always doing this in my role as a priest is that for me, I am a priest. It's not separate from the things that I love. In fact, one of the joys in my life is that I get to do this as a priest. That I write fantasy stories as a priest. I love Star Wars as a priest. In fact, this upcoming Saturday, I'll be one of the main hosts of the biggest Star Wars convention in the Netherlands. I'm doing the whole thing on the main stage. I'm going to interview like actors from Star Wars. I'm going to interview the lady who plays the what's her name? Let me look that up for you. But anyway, last year I did the same thing, and I interviewed a number of Star Wars actors, which was fantastic. But the thing is, they asked me because I'm a priest and a Star Wars geek. So it's kind of the combination that makes it special. Let's see. So who am I going to interview? Do I have that schedule somewhere? Let me see. We have a lot. Of course, there are a lot of other people involved in this as well. Okay, here's a spreadsheet. Can I look at that on my phone? Right. So I will first be part of a panel discussion called the Scruffy Looking Nerf Herders. So I'm going to join 3 friends who are also very much into Star Wars. They're all from the world of media. And we're just going to talk for an hour about Star Wars and just completely geek out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anthony Daniels then is next on the main stage. He's going to talk about his career in Star Wars. Really looking forward to that. Then there's a quiz. I don't have to do that. And then there is a let's see, what is this? Oh, this is the fan stage actually. Prop making. Yeah. So I'm going to interview Josh Roth, who this is his very first appearance on a convention. He, for instance, made the IG-80 something robot you see in The Mandalorian. He's involved in all the mechanics of the Baby Yoda. He's been doing props for years and years, including the props for the upcoming Mandalorian movie. So I'm going to interview him. Then I'm hosting a session about the 45th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back, my favorite Star Wars movie. That's going to be fun. Then we have Anthony Daniels. And then I am going to interview Michael Lynch. I don't remember what that was about. I'm not prepared yet. I still have 3 days. And then I'm going to, that's it, that's her name, Diana Lee Inosanto. So she plays in, you know her from, both from the Clone Wars, but then she has just a voiceover, or the voice actor role. But she was in Ahsoka. She's that Witch of Dathomir, you know. And apparently she knows who I am, because she enjoys my videos in which I geek out about Star Wars. So that's going to be a lot of fun, but also it's very intimidating to have to, do that entire thing. But I'll be wearing this. I won't be walking around in Star Wars t-shirts, well, underneath, right, secretly, but I'm just going to be, because I'm the Star Wars priest, so it's kind of part of my online identity, I guess, but it's truly who I am. Hope that answers your question. Thanks for asking. Frankie is still wondering the time you filed a stalking. Oh, yeah. Well, we're not going to talk about that. Actually, you're not supposed to be in this chat, formally speaking. Anyway, then we've got Jonah Blaine. I think I get your thought process. My issue is that it waters it down and could tell you the bad advice just as well. So this is about ChatGPT. I'd rather read and listen to individuals, but I see what you are saying. Bloody, bloody, blah. Okay, this lady that is currently in the chat is actually currently putting herself in a lot of trouble, because I will have to report this. So I would kindly want to invite you to get out of this chat and don't interfere. There are going to be consequences. I'm very serious about that. Dragon King. This is of no concern to all of you here in the chat, but this is an issue. Hello, Father. I wonder if having the Bible on audio while sleeping is wrong. No, it's not wrong. Just put it on. It can maybe even connect with your subconscious. Why not? There are worse things that you can listen to. Justin shared this on Facebook. Can't wait for the next Tron movie coming out in October. Me too. I'm very excited about it. What anime am I currently watching? I'm watching Attack on Titan. It's awesome. It's so good. What a story. And there is another anime that I started watching. What was it again? It was on Netflix. Oh, I've only watched... Oh, yeah, Orb. And it's a... I think I've already mentioned this last time, but I want to do a series about Orb, because there are also a lot of kind of theological interesting issues or themes in that series. So, yeah. There's just so much good anime out there. Robert wants to know if there are any words on how to deal with Americans, especially with the church. I'm Canadian, live in Nova Scotia, that is having a problem. Yeah, the situation in the United States is weird, to put it mildly. I would always encourage you to focus on the people that you can connect with. There are a lot of loud people, but they're not necessarily representative for all Americans. There are most of my friends are North American, and I don't have any issues with them. I love them dearly, and it's just that in the news, on social media, you see a lot of the angry people, a lot of the, I don't know, just loud, intolerant people, but don't focus on it. Focus on, on the helpers, on the people that listen, the people, yeah. That's kind of how I try to deal with it, but it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to avoid, and you hear the news and you hear what's happening there, and then I get so perturbed, because it's really worrying, very, very worrying. We've gone through similar issues here in Europe, and it led to World War II, and so it's scary. It's very scary, but at the same time, they want you to be afraid. Some people want you to be afraid, so don't be afraid, and always keep looking at the good people, because those are the people in majority. Dragon King wants to know, why did pride become the most cardinal sin? Pride become a cardinal sin, as I think this week the faith and being proud has similar tendency. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but pride is not the most important sin. It's just one of the many sins. Pride, the nefarious aspect of pride is that it has a tendency to separate you from others and from God, because you think that it is that you don't need anyone. I mean, the sin of Adam and Eve is pride. It's like, okay, we don't need God. We just eat from this fruit, and then we're like God, So basically, you tell someone who loves you, like, I don't care about you, and that breaks the relationship. Orb, yeah, Sono knows the series as well. Movements of the Earth, an anime of astronomers and the Catholic Church. Well, the Catholic Church is an anime version of the Catholic Church. Historically, it's it's a bit of an exaggeration, and there's a lot that I would like to say about it, because it's much more nuanced than they show. But it's a very interesting series. Yeah, so it's not a problem to be proud of someone who does something good. If it's your child who does something amazing, that's not what pride is. Pride is like, I don't need anyone else but me. That, like, I'm superior to anyone else. That is basically putting you above someone else, and that breaks connections. That breaks relationships. What am I writing? I'm writing a fantasy novel called The Dawn of the Story Mages. If you want to know more about it, you can follow my updates on my YouTube channel, which is called Father Roderick Books. Father Roderick Books. I'm going to wrap up because it's past 8, so my time is now over, and I have to start preparing for tomorrow. Let's see. I have a science fiction book recommendation for you that I think would be perfect for a big screen adaptation. It's called Children of Time by Tchaikovsky. That's an amazing book. I haven't read it yet, but I hear it is fantastic. Ronan says, Shalom, Father. I was curious about your views on critical Bible scholarship, like the documentary Hypothesis. I'm all for critical scholarship. It's a bit too broad of an issue to talk about right now because I'm wrapping up, but feel free to bring it up next week. Let's see. Helma is going to meet me Saturday at Echo Base. Yeah, definitely visit and say hi. Right. Margot, thank you for offering to moderate. We are dealing with a real life stalker that I've reported to the police, and I will do again following this interaction. Just wanted to say that formally here. That's why I'm not deleting these comments, because they're going to be proof. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. But as a priest, you're vulnerable, and some people just cannot behave themselves. Have I ever encountered negativity because you're a Catholic priest and a geek? Oh yeah, sure. Just like anyone else. Scratch says there are two places in Tolkien's work where a protagonist is talking with dragon ties to manipulate him. Schmaug. Why do you think is the case? Well, I think the Schmaug is definitely kind of a diabolical figure. It's a metaphor of the devil, I think. He's hoarding. It's all very selfish. So yeah, it's. I think he kind of tones it down later on because it's a bit too schematic. Of course, the Hobbit was a children's story. So in The Lord of the Rings, it's, I'm glad that there's not a second Smaug. Let's see, but we can talk about that next week as well. Let's see, what else have we got? Currently reading Eye of the Needle by Ken Follett. Yeah, it's amazing. I love Ken Follett. He's a great writer, very atmospheric. God knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah, it's about Pope Leo. What is your favorite comedic comedy? I'm currently watching Young Sheldon, and I love it. I was a huge fan of The Big Bang Theory, but Young Sheldon is even more charming, and it's so funny, and it's so good, and it really goes deep. I'm in the last season right now, and wow, that is amazing writing. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up. I figured that I would start with some of these smaller books before I read Pillar of the Earth. Oh, you can start with Pillar of the Earth. It is a big book, but it's really easy to read. It's a roller coaster story. It's fun to read, and not at all difficult. This is not Brandon Sanderson. Alejandro says, I'm a big fan of your videos on Evangelion. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Wonderful. Yeah, I failed to buy the series on Blu-ray. I was at an anime con 2 weeks ago, and I kind of wanted to buy. They had the whole series, but it's also up on Amazon Prime. So I go, is that, it's a bit of a waste of money. If I can stream it for free, why would I buy it? But now I'm thinking I should have bought it because, of course, these streaming platforms can take something off their platform at any time, and then I'll be without those movies. They had the movies, not the TV show. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry, my apologies for the stalker in the comments. But I will certainly take measures, and we will talk next week. And then, of course, Margot, if you're available, I would gladly have you moderate the conversation so we can avoid future occurrences of nasty people. So Kananga Rap, can you save that question for next week? I'll gladly talk about it, but I'm running out of time. So have a wonderful rest of your evening, and talk to you soon. God bless.